What's going on, everybody? Thanks so much for checking out this video. In today's video, what we're going to be showing you is me going through a full athletic style dynamic warm-up that I like to utilize before I go into the gym to do deadlifts specifically. Now, I have had a lot of lower back injuries, which is why I really like to spend a lot of time on the warm-up. So if you guys are people who go into the gym and you don't spend much time warming up, you don't spend much time focusing on getting your body loose and activating your muscles before you deadlift, that's definitely something I would highly recommend you do. So what I want you guys to focus on is this specific dynamic warm-up pre-deadlift. Now, you guys can feel free to utilize this style warm-up before you go into the gym or in deadlift or squat, and I'll let you guys check this out so you guys can actually write this down and maybe even utilize it in your own training. And if you do happen to utilize it in your own training, please go ahead and tag me, let me know, leave me a comment, and without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and open up about a topic that I think is super interesting, and I'm sure you guys are going to benefit from it highly. So what I'd highly recommend you guys do when you're going into the gym to do these really heavy compound exercises, things like squats, things like deadlifts, is listen to your body. And I cannot reiterate this enough. I think that oftentimes when we're implementing training programs that are based around things like daily undulated periodization or any style of periodization in general around powerlifting or any skill specific exercise where you have to do a deadlift or you have to do a squat or a bench press, it's really common for people to not listen to their bodies. So what I mean by that is if you happen to walk into the gym and you squat down into a squat position, and you just notice that your body's not cooperating on that day. So it's really hard for you to get to the bottom of a squat. Maybe you have some pain in your knees. Maybe you have some pain in your hips, or your hips feel tight, or your lower back's bothering you, or your ankles are tight, your calves are tight. There comes a point in time where yes, you can spend time warming up, but I don't necessarily think you should spend a ton of time having to warm up just to be able to get yourself into the position where you're going to be loading your body with a ton of weight. I think that this oftentimes can lead to injuries over the course of time because you're basically ignoring the signs and the signals that your body's giving you before you go into the gym and try to load to load up the bar and go through these motions in which your body's telling you not to go to. So it's very common for people who are running these types of programs to have maybe squats on their program 3, sometimes even 4 days a week, and every single time they go into the gym to do a specific lift, they have to spend 20-30 minutes just rolling around on the floor with all these balls and all these different roller apparatuses and all this stuff on every single muscle that they think is just tight, and they're trying to loosen it up through actually applying pressure to it with a lot of these different tools that you can get on Rogue Fitness and stuff. However, what I think is a better alternative to that is actually just taking the muscle through a range of motion through a contraction. So what I'm referring to basically is instead of taking a roller and rolling out the entirety of your quadricep and sticking all these balls and stuff into your hips and rolling your quads out with all these different apparatuses, instead of doing that, actually just trying to work the muscle through a contracted range of motion. So whether that be something like maybe a leg extension, a hamstring curl, lying on your back and doing a glute bridge and flexing your hamstrings and your glutes at the same time, sitting down on your butt with your hands kind of providing you stability in the front, and then raising your legs up to activate your hip flexors. Things like that I think can be extremely helpful in your ability to just be able to get yourself into the position without spending a ton of time sticking balls and all these different apparatuses into your joints or into your connective tissues that are basically sending you neurological signals telling you, hey, don't go to that position today because maybe there's still some damage here, or maybe this specific area feels tight. So that's just a little food for thought that I'd urge you guys to consider the next time you go into the gym and you have to squat and deadlift, but maybe you're just not feeling it. Because I think collectively, we could come to the understanding that oftentimes when your body's telling you not to go to a specific range of motion or not to do a specific exercise because something feels off, and then you go through it anyways, what ultimately ends up happening? What ultimately ends up happening is that those are usually the days where you go into the gym and you tell yourself, I'm not feeling my best. I know that I didn't spend maybe enough time warming up, or I know I don't feel right. Maybe I was sitting down all day. Maybe I work at a very labor-intensive job and just my body just doesn't feel right. But you're pushing through those really heavy sets anyways. And then ultimately what happens is certain things start to tighten up on you, certain things start to lock up on you. And then that's when injuries happen through that excessive amount of accumulated volume. So food for thought there in regards to going into the gym and only focusing on deadlifting and squatting, or exercises that are really going to load your spine every single time you lift. So you guys can tell there that I spent about 5-6 minutes actually really cognitively focusing on trying to get warm for the deadlift. Now, something I want to reiterate here is that I was basically sitting in a chair for like 8 hours this day before I ever even got up to go to the gym. And even before I got into the gym, I was sitting down, I was writing client plans, I was answering emails, I was doing phone calls, I was doing Zoom calls, I was doing a lot of things that were mentally kind of fatiguing on me, but at the same time, I didn't really move my butt, like the entire day. And what basically happened there was that when I got into the gym, it just felt off. And while I intended to go in and reach a max set on deadlifts, I think that because I was sitting down all day and I wasn't really neurologically stimulated that much, I haven't been taking pre-workouts really at all. The only pre-workouts I've been taking is maybe like a couple blocks of dark chocolate here and there, maybe one caffeine capsule, or drinking a cup of coffee or something like that. So I wasn't really neurologically that stimulated either. And something that I've really learned over the last few years is how to leave my ego at the door. And I think that if you want to try to avoid injury, I think this is a great thing to learn how to do. And it's a skill that every resistance trainee should try to master. So you guys could see there that when I was lifting the barbell, and this was just the barbell, right? Everything still felt pretty tight. So I'm like, all right, I don't really feel like my hamstrings are activated that much. So I went ahead and did a set of lying hamstring curls to really try to turn my hamstrings on. And at that point in time, I felt like everything was pretty well activated and it was time to put some pounds on the bar. So here you guys can see a few cues I want you to focus on here when it comes to the deadlift. You can tell that obviously I do pull conventional, and there's a reason for that. So when I was 14 years old, I had my first ACL injury, and I had to have my medial hamstring removed as a means to replace my ACL with my hamstring tendon. And ever since then, I've always kind of put more pressure on my right leg. Now, the reason I pull conventional is because what essentially happened over the course of that time was that, my body basically tightened up on one side. So basically, I was able to cause a lot of hypertrophy to my right leg, whereas my left leg kind of always fell behind due to the atrophy that I had experienced through tearing my ACL when I was 14 and then rupturing my patella tendon when I was 19 years old. And so ever since then, I've always had an imbalance. And due to that imbalance, when I used to power lift and I used to pull sumo, I was pretty good at pulling sumo. I think my best numbers there was like a 535 pound sumo deadlift at around like 180, 190 pounds, I believe. Even squatting, I believe I squatted 495 at 175 pounds, and I squatted 525 at 198. So obviously the 495 at 176 was far more impressive. But what happened over that duration of time was that I just didn't listen to my body. I was basically in a position where I realized that I was pretty good at a specific skill, which was squatting and deadlifting. And what essentially happened over time was that I didn't listen, and the volume caught up to me, the imbalances caught up to me, and then huge shift in my spine, L4 and L5 screaming at me, and that's when I basically had to stop powerlifting. So you guys can see here, I pull with a conventional stance now because I feel like my hips are more in a neutral position, more in a controlled position. And I think that if you can control your pelvis and you can control your scapula, then you're putting yourself in a really good position to execute on just about every single lift. So what you guys have been watching here is me gradually progressing up in weight and then trying to reach a top set. Now this is as heavy as I went, And what I want you guys to focus on are a few cues here. So I'm going to set my hips down, lock my back in place. You guys can see right here, I'll breathe in, set back. And when I go to drive through the floor, my hips shouldn't come up because I have to try to maintain a neutral spine the entire time. Now I did get I believe four reps here with 415, but you guys can see I'm in extreme control. I'm trying not to let the weight control me at all. Rather, I want to be able to control every single inch of this range of motion. That set was pretty darn tough, and I knew that pulling from the floor was not going to be the most conducive thing for me to do for another set, but I still wanted to accumulate some more volume on the posterior chain, so I went ahead and dropped the weight down to 315 pounds and did one set of 15 reps here on block pulls, and these felt great. And something that's really interesting is that I was actually able to get sore in my upper back, my glutes, and my hamstrings with only doing that one top set and then doing this one set of 15 reps. Now you can see this set of 15 reps is unbroken, and felt really, really good, and I was really happy with my performance on this day, and I definitely want to continue to implement some type of deadlift in my training routine for the time to come. I appreciate you guys checking out this video. Hopefully you found it helpful, and hopefully it will allow you to take a little bit deeper look into your ability to squat and deadlift and things like that, because ultimately if we can't have our health, we can't do anything anyway. So thanks so much for checking out this video. If you found it helpful, leave me a comment, and I'll